Um, I saw a post somewhere on YouTube. It was saying that getting a job in 2026 is probably an humiliation ritual. But anyway, Gikomba starts moving even before some of the offices here in Kenya are even open. I mean, traders are hauling mitumba belts off the truck in the dark. Same applies to the welders in Kamukunji, who are already sparkling even before the sun is probably up. Our whole economy is fully awake while the half of the cities still queuing for a matatu into town. Nobody out there is waiting for a job offer. They're already working, have been for hours. But what seems to bother me sometimes is, and yet, when you ask a room full of graduates what they're chasing, and almost nobody points towards Kikomba, everybody's pointing towards the 15%, the office, the lanyard, the formal thing, or what we call the corporate ladder. But let's actually put the numbers down properly here, because it's bigger than most people think. The latest figures from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, the 2026 Economic Survey, put informal employment at 83.8%. Roughly, roughly 18.1 million people, and the formal sector is sitting at 16.2%, about 3.5 million people. And of the new jobs created last year, the overwhelming majority, well over, they were over 80%, came from the informal side, not the formal side. Sit with that for a second, man. Just sit with that. We are not talking about a shrinking expectation here. We are talking about the actual size of the Kenyan economy, and it's telling us pretty plainly where the real center of gravity is. It's not just where we were all pointed to look. And I went through the same pipeline everyone else did in my life. I mean, good grades, go to campus, everything like that. And I think good grades are treated like a down payment on a good job, you know. University is treated like the last real decision you need to make. Nobody ever once sat me down and said, by the way, the formal side sector you are aiming your entire 20s at only actually has room for about 6 out of 20 people in the working in the working Kenyan class, That much that math was never explained to me. I just observed the goal without ever even seeing the odds. And it's like you're trying to make a routine for yourself, like if you're trying to go for morning runs, but you have never done something like that. And when you go for the first day, you do it perfectly. But when you go to sleep, the next day when you wake up, you find yourself, your body is aching terribly, bro. You're just taking the goal, but without considering the odds here. But here is where I actually go back and forth on. You know, I want to be honest about both sides of it actually, because I don't think this is simple at all, guys. Sometimes I think that the informal sector gets romanticized by people who've never actually had to survey inside it. No steady income, no protections if you get sick. I mean, come on. No guarantee the next month looks anything like this one. It's like throwing cards all over and aiming at your luck. That is that instability is real, bro. And pretending it's some hidden paradise everyone should have been chasing all along will be dishonest. Because look at the social media, bro. Everybody out there is just creating their own content of going out there like Toi, Gikush, you know, other people are welding, other people doing MJE. Bro, this shit ain't easy. Okay, pardon my dialect, but it ain't easy at all. But also other days I think the formal sector gets a status it hasn't actually earned by size. We build an entire self-image, an entire definition of making it around a slice of the economy that only ever had room for the six of us. Such as it's absurd, man. That's not a personal failure when it doesn't work out. That's basic arithmetic finally catching up with an expectation that was mismatched with reality from the start. And I think the actual mistake isn't chasing the 15%. I still think a stable formal job is a complete reasonable thing to want, generally speaking. And the mistake is treating the other 84 as the fallback plan, the waiting room. the thing you settle for until the real opportunity shows up. Just think about it. Most people have known who have worked. I mean, I know a few guys who have worked in Gikomba, and when they get a formal job, they forget about Gikomba, and they know Gikomba fed them for years and years maybe before they got a formal job, you know. And I mean, Gikomba doesn't wait for anybody's real opportunity to show up. It's already the real economy, moving at full speed every single morning, whether or not the 15% ever notices. But I still don't know exactly where I land on this for my own life, you know. Still somewhere between both worlds myself, same as most people my age probably are, right? I mean, I'm a 24-year-old guy. But I stopped calling one side. I stopped calling one side the dream and the other side as the backup. That framing was never actually true, but it felt true for a while because that's the story we were all handed before anyone showed us the numbers, right? The traders are already howling bells of the track this morning, same as yesterday, same as tomorrow, probably same even the next years. I mean, 80%, 84% of the countries is already working, guys. But I'd end my feed today by saying might be both actually might be worth actually looking at where the work already is. That might be worth the effort instead of only where we were told to want it. Because just think about it. Most of us, we don't want that job because you want a job that you sat down in the library the whole day study. You don't want to actually just hustle, bro. And no, one thing I might say is that school teaches us the passive way of making money, but the streets teach us the active way of actually what making an income. Anyways, thank you guys for watching.